And welcome to Hacking Business Technology. Hello, Mark.
Hello. How are you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great.
Hey, everybody.
So it's been a while since you and I have been on the podcast together. Farrar and I, took the reins last week while Barron's on his European tour of. I think he's doing Rock the Ages. Was it he's doing a cover band tour or something? I don't really know.
I'm sure he is. He could play in the street or something. But yeah, I think he's in some exotic country. But yeah, I haven't got to watch last week's episode yet, but I did see some flashcards come out. So
yes, she did. She hooked us up with some Reno flashcard recaps as as a knowledge custodian that she is. What we wanted to talk about this week, Mark, was innovation and the challenges that organizations have. It's funny. I was at the Gartner event for operations. Their whole theme was this what they're calling bi-modal IT. Have you heard of this bi-modal IT thing?
Just briefly, but it reminds me of two-speed IT that I remember someone talking about a year or two ago.
Yeah.
Tell us what it is.
Well, so it's this whole concept that you have to have two views of your applications and infrastructure, and that there are core elements of your technology that they're very codependent. So changing those things needs to go at a little bit slower pace, more your traditional operations. That's kind of where ITIL and IT service management fit in really well. And then there's a layer on top of that, which needs to go at a faster pace because the risks are lower and the remediation process can be faster and the impacts can be less. So that needs to have a separate pace, and it goes through, kind of fall into more the DevOps world, right? A little bit more quicker. Yeah. And so, I was at the conference and I kept hearing this bi-modal IT thing, and I kept just thinking bipolar IT, and really feeling like, in operations we just, this is going to be hard, right? Because you're asking me to make decisions about like what's risk, what's not, as if we have enough requirements or as if we have enough data. And it was only really when I saw George Spafford. You know George Spafford? You ever seen him speak?
Yeah.
Great. He's just fantastic. He's such a bright guy.
Yep.
One of the co-authors of Invisible Ops, one of the co-authors of the Phoenix Project or Project Phoenix, whatever that book is called. I only remember it still by When IT Fails, which is what his original title, which is what I think Gene and George should have put it out as. That would have been such a better title. Take some people off, get them motivated. But anyways, really bright guy, Gartner analyst, and he broke it down. And what he was really saying is that, and it kind of came back to something we've talked about a lot. It's just how valuable configuration management is, and in that your singularity on your processes just doesn't work. You need these processes that can be adaptive to the scenarios, right? And so he was talking about configuration management as a way to say, hey, if these assets are not driven by SOX, not driven by regulatory, not driven by core functionality, but serve a particular line of business or a particular vital business function, and you can control kind of the risk. You can have intimate feedback with the users of that vital business function. Then they should go into a different pace, and they call that pace setting. So there's bi-modal IT pace setting, and now that pace is going to go faster.
Okay.
So it's kind of interesting, but the question I have is, as we look to build an innovation culture, I mean, is that even possible? I mean, does changing your awareness of risk make you more innovative? What do you think?
Oh, my head's spinning right now. So, I mean, innovation is hard to talk about on the operations side in general. But I don't know. I mean, I'm confused about the whole premise. So bimodal indicates two. So there's fast and slow, I imagine, or faster and fast.
You would hope. But probably slow and really slow.
Slow and really slow. But what's to say that infrastructure needs to go slower than applications? Can we boil it down to be that simple?
I guess it could be that simple, right? Because you can't have, it's not like you can be swapping out your infrastructure nearly as fast as you're making application changes, right?
I don't know. I mean, that's part of the whole IT operations automation type thing. You press a button, it moves from one data center to another. I mean, isn't that the idea? We've been working just as hard on agility in that space, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but you're not necessarily changing your data center though. You're just changing where the processes are running from. But you've already built out the infrastructure.
Right.
So it's not like I'm replacing my storage array drives, or I'm changing my my virtual disk, or my iSCSI, or my operating systems. It's not like I'm rolling out new operating systems every week. I may do patch upgrades or updates on that operating system, but I'm not. Right. I'm not rolling forward.
There's certainly been advancements in load balancing and clustering and all those types of things that allows you to make those changes in a way that doesn't affect the service or the application. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. So I guess that's a great question, right? I mean, if you think about it, what is infrastructure now with like microservices and Docker and stuff like that? You have containerized very tight operating functions. So if I need more compute, or if I need more disk, or if I need more operating functions, I can spin those things, expand those things programmatically. It's all software defined, right? And because it's software defined, I can do it on the fly.
Right.
So
I just not sure that I agree with the basic premise. I mean, you could just as easily make the argument that applications are more averse to changes because they're directly interfacing with the user, and so then you have the user factor, and there's a big risk there. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, your users are going to slow you down.
Right.
We could have more functionality and capability, but our users aren't going to adopt.
I don't know.
That's a good point.
It just seems like it's just, again, it's taking us one step further to something I've seen is inevitable for a long time, and that's the infrastructure being split out from the application, and sourcing the infrastructure, all of that moving to large cloud providers, and I don't think that those types of providers would agree that they can't be agile in the same way. I'm not sure.
Right. No, that's a good point. When I was at CITS, I saw Ian Aitchison speak on innovation. He used the scenario of Uber, and he was saying that hailing taxis and using your mobile phone to make requests, is not anything new. We've been doing that, hailing taxis for 100 plus years or whatever, using our phone, since they first enabled the ability to have digital on them. But then it was, the unique way of combining those things too, using geolocation services, using the request, using validation and profiling as a way to determine, and feedback as a way to determine the safety and stability and security of the driver. So it's incorporating a whole bunch of stuff that necessarily isn't innovative, but putting it to the use in an innovative way. And so I wonder about that sometimes, with like Uber. And so when I spoke at Gartner, what I talked about was operational excellence versus innovation. How, what do we do? And because I've got this concept of innovation management, which rubs people in the wrong way. It's like, well, you can't manage innovation. I'm like, no, you can't manage innovation per se, but what you can do is you can create a platform for it, right? By having, where do you put in log feedback, and how do you measure and manage that and prioritize that? How do you do the maturation of ideation? So when you have ideas and you want to mature them or grow them and get collaborative feedback around that. And to me, that requires a platform, whether it be Slack or whether it be, SharePoint or whatever it be. There needs to be a process of like, hey, here's we're going to throw ideas. Because if you just start throwing your ideas around anywhere and everywhere, then you miss that collaboration. You miss that ability to search. You miss that ability to engage in the conversation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I've talked about this before, where I believe that innovation can be made into a process. And there are companies that are good at that, and there are companies that just don't do it at all. A lot of times innovation happens accidentally, or it happens in little bits here and there without any kind of formal framework. But ITIL talks about controlling innovation to reduce risk, but I believe that there can be a pure strategic innovative process where there are those life cycle phases that innovation goes through, and not just to keep it going and the momentum going and engage people, but to make sure that it continuously happens. So
Right.
the introduction of innovation, if you're stagnating as a corporation, that's totally possible.
Like I love it when I see certain organizations like this large life insurance organization in New York. They were using ServiceNow to manage some of their policies and regulatory commitments around policies in different countries. So they were actually using the CMDB as a relationship model between, if this law changes, here's the policies that would be affected, or if we're going to change this policy, here's the laws we have to validate against, right? Which the way they set it up was just super, super simple, and it took away tons and tons and tons of work that in the years past would have, the knowledge would sit out there, but the relationship didn't exist. So I look at that and I say, that's an interesting area where those in the service management space, as we talk about enterprise service management, for instance, where we can bring to bear ways of doing things in a new, innovative way, right? I always just kind of look at innovation as removing a constraint in which we've lived under before. Right? And so, to me, and a lot of it is like, if you don't, like, CSI to me is probably the biggest area. That is probably the closest starting point to the innovation process. I would think.
Yeah. But I mean, it's sad when you think about how innovation happens in most companies. I think a lot of times it's just, the worst case being perhaps each person is asked to provide, once a year, what goals they'd like to have that year. And they come up with some ideas that are, a little bit further than what they're doing in their job today. And the ones that excite that manager boil up, and then those get filtered, and that's it for innovation. I mean, that's pretty pathetic. And then there's the reverse, which is not really reverse, but the other side of the problematic situation is where there's just a couple people or a group of people who are doing innovation and no one else is included. But neither of those is a culture of innovation, which requires a process to keep it going. A process and a tool. I mean, not much different than the holacracy stuff we've been talking about, how that requires a robust and sophisticated tool to keep the whole thing going. I believe that great innovation does as well.
Yeah, I mean, holacracy was more about self-governance, whereas, you got to think about it like, where's the factors for what is innovative culture? I think I look towards Apple, for instance. I mean, I would have said that you asked anybody, was Apple a innovation standard? And probably 3 or 4 years ago, everybody would have said, yeah, definitely. But I wonder now if that would be the same response, because they've become so commonplace and so pervasive and almost commoditized, and because their quality is so significantly, rapidly reducing. Every iOS has just so many terrible reports and failures, and they're just lagging in other ways. Like you still can't get a laptop with touchscreen, but iPad was the innovative touch tactile. So you got these really challenging perceptions. So I mean, even if you can start to build an environment in which a innovation culture could start to formulate organically, can you sustain it? But what are the sustainable factors?
Right, or how do you sustain it? I think people are used to such extreme innovation in their personal technology space that it's furthering the gap between normal corporations and something like Apple or Google and whatnot.
Right.
I don't know, but I mean, we more and more we surround ourselves with our own personal kind of systems of innovation, whether it's reminders or little, quotes to keep us going and push our goals further and stuff like that. It's a culture that we tried to produce for ourselves in our own space, but corporations need the same thing. If you're not using a collective kind of innovation engine within a corporation, then you're missing something for sure. I mean, it's not much different than holacracy, where it takes circles and communities. I think innovation requires the same thing. It requires people to throw ideas out there for those to be vetted within the community and to be voted on or liked or what have you, and multiple people contributing. I mean, it just takes a community. I don't see any strong contender for another way of doing it.
Yeah, you know, it takes a community, but I wonder, you know, does the ideation almost always just start with a singular person? I mean, look at Instagram or look at Uber. I mean, it really started with that one person who just so badly wanted it for themselves, right? With Instagram, the guy just wanted to have a cool app to make pictures look good, so he taught himself how to code. Or the guy in Uber just couldn't get a taxi and decided, it's like, this is stupid. I want a taxi to come to me, and my phone knows where I am. Why can't it hail it?
Well, and when you're talking about that level, you're talking about a different kind of community as well. I mean, Uber and Airbnb and all those types of companies feed off of each other. It really is like an innovative circle. They're all kind of taking ideas and taking it one step further and that sort of thing. But a lot of companies don't even engage in that type of innovative vision in their space. You know, they have something locked down that they know they do well, and they just try to keep doing it. And it's scary to look outside to see what other people are doing. And so they stop pushing the limit and they try to just get the value out of what they're already doing really well. I don't know. It's a deadly formula to not be engaged in that kind.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I really missed. You know, when I had SMAC and I was in the Mass Challenge Innovation Lab there with whatever we were, 60, 70 companies, and on the 14th floor down on the Seaport in Boston. You know, it was really just such a cool vibe. And what was so amazing is how rapidly products would progress and how rapidly the message would change. You know, you'd go talk to one guy and, you know, well, we're like, there was a company called Lebu. I don't even know where they are today, but when I first chatted with those guys, it's like, well, we're a collaboration tool for people to help come together and tell stories. And then like within 6 months later, it's like, well, we're a tool for co-authoring books of people that it's like all of a sudden they had pivoted, you know, and the pivots and the changes and the product development, you know, and it's like you were so focused on all this back end business intelligence, and next thing you know, they're just trying to put out a mobile app. They felt safe to fail, you know. They felt it was okay to make that pivot. They felt, you know, it's like it was almost a survival tactic, right? In a lot of ways. Yeah. You know, like failure was the only option. And it's, you know, contrast that to the development team that you work with, right? I mean, we are so far from that mentality, aren't we?
Right. I mean, it really is a distinctive startup type mentality that you either have or you don't have. And I think you take that position of a risk taker or not. There's not that many companies that can do both, you know, that can be your safe bet and take risks.
I think there's people who can do both.
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
My business partner, you know, I love him, and he's one of the smartest IT guys that I know. You know, his personal pitch was, I build highly scalable, durable systems. His pitch was not, I build rapidly prototyping, fit for failure, ready to be adaptable. You know, and so we didn't survive as a startup in some ways because, you know, he was really focused on building a test harness and validating code, and our sprint cycles were months, not days. The idea of continuous release was something we didn't get to towards the end. It was just too late for us. And he's gone back now to the enterprise and very successful, you know, VP in IT and managing teams that can build highly durable systems. So, I mean, I think there's some cultures where, you know, again, we've talked about this before, I don't want the guys who are writing the software for the plane to be DevOps guys. I don't want them to be agile, you know.
Right, and you don't want them to fail.
I don't want them to fail, right? I want them to be risk adverse and so, you know, such control freaks.
Yeah. I have a feeling though that, I mean, there's a lot of people who talk about embracing failure. You know, it's almost trendy to talk about it, but I don't. How do you build a culture that embraces failure and succeed as a company? I mean, that I don't think many people know how to do that, or corporations know how to do that. I mean, it's easy if you're Google to build Google X and have this little wing that has some funding and can do whatever they want, because you know the rest of your business is going to rock and roll regardless.
That's right. That's right. That's not your primary income stream.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe, you know, maybe that's part of the bi-modal IT, is that maybe you need to have an IT, maybe you need to have two CIOs. Maybe you need to have CIO for mode 1 and CIO for mode 2, and the guy who can look and think about cost and regulatory and you know, process optimization and continual improvement from a performance perspective. And then you can have the CIO who she's thinking about, you know, new and hip and creative and capability. You know, she's borderline a CMO, you know, she's thinking about new market ways, new creative opportunities. Be interesting.
It's interesting that you're combining fast and innovative versus slow and operational there as well. I think, I mean, I'm just trying to think about that. I'm still not sure. I'm still having trouble connecting with that dichotomy. I don't know. There's a good article that people should check out where they talk about, and you'll just have to Google it, or we can put it in the notes, how Facebook moved 20 billion Instagram images without you noticing. I mean, so literally when Facebook bought Instagram, they had to migrate the entire catalog of images to an entirely new system and data center. And I don't know. I mean, there's a huge risk in that, obviously. But I don't know. Where does that fit into it? I mean, shouldn't we be able to be that flexible? That, I don't know if you'd call that agile or not, but.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, but if you go back and look at the business case, I guess there too, is like, what was I going to do if one of my pictures on Instagram disappeared? Was I going to cancel my Instagram subscription to get my money back? It's free.
It's free, but
now,
it's not.
Now move my $20 billion in financial transactions.
No. But Matt, I mean, Instagram is worth a ton of money. I mean, whether or not it's free is irrelevant. I mean, in terms of the value of that company and the damage that could be caused if Instagram lost all their images right now. I mean, I don't know. Is Instagram public? I don't know. No, it's part of Facebook now. So
it's public because it's part of Facebook.
Yeah. So if Instagram lost all their images, there would be a lot of real money lost, right? All the stockholder money.
I don't know. I mean, when's the last time you went back and looked at someone's Instagram picture from 5 days ago?
I don't know.
I mean, what's the history on Instagram? Like, how much value is there really there? I mean,
I guess that's the question.
Yeah,
is it really value or not? I mean, it is because people say it is.
That's right. That's right. Well, you know, and that's why I go back to, it's like, I think there's just some organizations who are just never going to cross this chasm. You know, they're not going to move on from, you know, if I fail, we will go out of business. Yeah, I don't know that people at Facebook are thinking that right now. Yeah, they might have some hiccups, they lose some memberships, but at this point, what would your alternative to be? I mean, because to be honest with you, it's not even the pictures that make you stick to Instagram. It's your followers and who you're following.
Yeah.
Now, if all of a sudden I lost all my followers, I probably would dump Instagram. I would dump Instagram because I don't want to take the time to go back and add all my followers. But if they lost my pictures, I'd be like, oh, whatever. That stinks. That's aggravating.
Well,
don't do it again.
So with failure, I mean, how do we help people within organizations feel comfortable and free to fail? I mean, can we come up with a failure process? Or maybe we could make failure part of CSI. Continual service failure.
Continual failure improvement.
I mean, seriously,
Yeah.
it would be nice if there was a process. I mean, people love to just take things and implement them. So if there was a process to say, here's how you can implement a process for allowing people to embrace failure, and here's some ways to go about doing that. But I don't think
Yeah, you bring up a good point though. Like, think about Instagram for a second. Going back to that,
yeah,
we might have said that losing pictures was probably the highest risk, because that's what we think about with Instagram. But like I said, I'd probably argue losing my followers or keep losing my password and making me reset. If you did that to me more than 3 times, I would probably just stop logging in. You would then no longer have engagement from me.
yeah.
So it's just like sometimes, this whole bi-modal thing gets really complex, because identifying and validating what risk or failure, like you said, what failure would look like or what's acceptable failure gets really, really tricky and interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they mean by bi-modal, if they mean ease of implementation. I mean, yes, it's easy to make agile changes to applications. I mean, you can change the Facebook color from blue to red probably with a couple clicks.
Yeah.
It's not easy to move 20 billion Instagram images.
Right.
So if that's all they mean, fine. But it doesn't mean that there's a difference in risk. I don't think so at all. I mean, a brand can go down the tubes in a minute because of a logo change. That's a marketing decision, not an infrastructure or an innovation decision. I mean, maybe innovation, but you know what I mean. I don't know. Risk is relative.
Risk is relative. Well, and that's how you hack business technology.
Yes.
Good show, Mark. Thanks for
good to see you
today. Bye, everybody. Have a great week.
Keep in touch, everybody. Bye.